There is a sacred rhythm beneath the noise of the world, a soft hum behind all the movement, all the striving, all the becoming. It does not clamor for your attention. It does not compete with the volume of your thoughts. It simply is constant, eternal, serene. It is the music of your source, the frequency of grace, and it has been playing within you all along. You do not need to earn your way into this grace. It is not given in exchange for worthiness, nor revoked for failure. It is the breath of the divine moving through you. It is the silent symphony your soul has always known. And yet, somewhere along the path, you may have forgotten how to listen. The world teaches noise. It teaches that you must perform to be seen, strive to be loved, achieve to be valued. It teaches you to reach outside for validation, for answers, for salvation. But grace does not reside in the outer world. Grace is an inner remembrance, not a future attainment. It cannot be chased. It can only be tuned into. To tune into grace is to come home to yourself, not the self shaped by fear, but the self sculpted by eternity. The self that existed before names, before stories, before scars. The self that still exists beneath every fear, every regret, every illusion. This tuning is not done with effort. It is done with surrender. You are not a static being. You are a vibration, a current, an unfolding field of consciousness, and grace is the sacred frequency on which your true self broadcasts. The more you resist life, the more you are deafened to that frequency. But the moment you soften, the moment you breathe into what is instead of fighting it, the melody begins to return. Grace is not an escape from life's pain. It is a spaciousness in which pain can be held without resistance. Grace is not the denial of difficulty. It is the awareness that even difficulty can be sacred. That even in the storm, there is a center of stillness. And that center is not found by avoiding the rain, but by becoming the calm. You do not tune into grace by fixing yourself. You tune into grace by being yourself, the real you, the unedited you, the self that doesn't need a mask to be enough. Because grace is not attracted to perfection, it flows naturally toward authenticity. The more real you are, the more freely it moves through you. There is a light that never flickers within you. Call it God, call it source, call it love. It is the same light. It does not come and go. Only your attention does. It does not withhold itself. Only your belief in separation creates that illusion. Grace is not a reward. It is a reality you awaken to when you let go of striving and return to being. You are not meant to be a warrior of the world's approval. You are meant to be a vessel of the sacred, not because you are superior, but because you are whole. Wholeness is not the absence of flaws. It is the embracing of all parts without resistance. Grace flows through wholeness because wholeness is truth, and truth is the language of grace. When you quiet your thoughts and feel into your being, you will sense it, that stillness, that soft awareness, that presence that asks for nothing but your permission to shine. It has no need to convince, no urge to compete. It's simply island. It has always been. It is the eternal I am whispering through every cell of your being. Let go of the belief that you are separate from that which you seek. You are not the radio struggling to find the signal. You are the signal itself. You are the broadcast of divine intelligence, wrapped in human skin for a little while, here not to win the world, but to remember the world within. This frequency of grace is your home vibration. When you live in it, everything aligns, not because the world changes, but because your perception does. Problems shrink, not because they disappear, but because you are no longer shrinking yourself to meet them. You rise, and in that rising you begin to see with the eyes of your soul. The ego lives in static. It thrives on noise, conflict, division. It feeds on the illusion of separation. But grace speaks only in harmony. It does not argue, it does not defend, it simply radiates. And when you stop fighting for your limitations, you will begin to hear it again. You were not created to strive endlessly for some future worthiness. You were created to be the embodiment of love here and now. And that love is not something you generate. It is something you allow. When you allow yourself to be who you already are, the gates of grace swing wide open. The Tao Te Ching says the Tao does nothing yet leaves nothing undone. Grace is like that. It flows without force. It moves mountains not by pushing, but by dissolving resistance. You do not need to force your life into shape. You need only to align with the current that already knows your shape. You've tried effort, you've tried performance, You've tried to outrun the silence, and now you are being invited to rest, not as a failure, as a return. Return to the breath, return to the heart, return to the now. This moment holds everything. It is the only place grace can be received. The past is memory. The future is projection. Grace is presence. And presence is eternity compressed into now. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are just being invited to listen again, to the silence beneath your name, to the stillness beneath your thoughts, to the divine frequency beneath your form. When you tune into this frequency, the world doesn't stop spinning, but your need to spin with it dissolves. You begin to walk through life as a living meditation. Every step becomes prayer. Every breath becomes a sacred yes. Every moment becomes enough. Grace doesn't demand that you change who you are. It asks that you remove what you are not. It asks that you lay down your weapons, the masks, the judgments, the comparisons, and come back to the original self, the self that is unshaken, unblemished, and unmistakably divine. You are not the storm. You are the sky in which the storm moves. You are not your story. You are the space in which that story is told. You are not the notes of the song. You are the silence that makes the music possible. This silence is not empty. It is pregnant with everything. And when you reside there, when you begin to live from that still point within, grace begins to orchestrate your life with a precision and beauty your mind could never achieve. The people you meet, the opportunities that unfold, the healing that arises, all of it begins to synchronize, not because you planned it, but because you aligned with it. This is the power of tuning in. You are not separate from the divine. You are not a guest in the temple. You are the temple. You are the sacred vessel through which love longs to flow. And the more you remember that, the more miracles become not the exception, but the norm. Because grace is not a miracle. It is the natural state of a soul in remembrance. The universe is not random. It is rhythmic. It is precise. It is ordered by love. And love is the tuning fork that brings you into resonance with the source. The more you love not as an act, but as a state, the more you vibrate with grace. So let love be your practice. Not the kind of love that seeks approval or avoids discomfort, but the kind that holds space, the kind that listens deeply, the kind that sees through illusion and remembers the soul beneath. Let grace teach you how to walk through fire without being burned, because when you are aligned with grace, even the flames become light. Let grace teach you how to sit with pain without needing it to vanish, because in that stillness, pain reveals its gift. Let grace teach you that you are not here to fix the world, but to be so rooted in your own truth that your very presence becomes healing. You are already enough. You are already worthy. You are already whole. This truth does not require belief. It only requires surrender. Surrender to the still, radiant presence that has never left you, not for a single breath. And from that surrender, from that sacred release of resistance, a new world emerges. A world not built by force, but revealed by grace. A world where you no longer beg for light because you remember you are the light. Stay tuned. I will continue writing the remaining uninterrupted flow of the 12,000-word soul awakening script. You do not need to push to find this light. You only need to pause, to soften, to feel. The mind will urge you to understand it, to name it, to map it, but grace cannot be grasped by thought. It is not an idea, it is an experience. It is felt in the stillness between breaths, in the tears that come when the heart finally lays down its armor, in the soft presence that remains when all else has been surrendered. And so I invite you, beloved soul, to stop reaching outward, to stop fighting the current of life, to stop bargaining with your own divinity. You are already aligned. You are already vibrating with the pulse of the stars. The only shift that remains is the one that happens within when you choose to remember instead of resist. There is nothing to fix. There is only something to feel. And when you feel fully, without judgment, without escape, you find that grace was never absent. It was simply waiting for the noise to subside. Grace is not a concept, it is a companion, a presence that walks beside you in silence, that holds you when you crumble, that whispers, you are loved, even when the world forgets. You do not have to strive for this love. You do not have to earn your way back into the arms of the universe. You are never out of them, even in your moments of despair, especially then, because grace is not conditional, it is eternal. When you tune into this frequency, you stop trying to get life right and start living life true. You stop performing and start being. You stop grasping and start receiving. Life becomes less about managing and more about allowing. You stop being the manager of your reality and become the co-creator of your destiny. But the soul does not create from scarcity. It creates from fullness, from enoughness, from presence. And so your only task is to return to the truth that you are already enough, already home, already divine. Let that truth live in your breath. Let it echo in your silence. Let it rise in you like dawn. You are not here to survive the world. You are here to sanctify it with your presence. And presence is the portal to grace. You do not need to understand this path to walk it. You only need to trust. Trust that the same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies is orchestrating your life with the same precision. Trust that even the pain has purpose, that even the detours are doorways, that even the silence is speaking if you know how to listen. And how do you listen? By becoming still, by becoming available, by releasing your grip on how it should be and opening to how it island. Grace flows to the surrendered heart like a river to the ocean. It is not delayed, it is received. The question is not whether grace is available. The question is whether you are open. Open to love, open to forgiveness, open to the possibility that you are already the miracle you've been waiting for. There is nothing more powerful than a human being who remembers their source, not in theory but in experience. One who walks not from fear but from alignment. One who no longer shouts to be heard but whispers with presence so profound that even the wind pauses to listen. This is who you are. Not a seeker, but a seer. Not a builder of identity, but a revealer of truth. Not a gatherer of worth, but a wellspring of divine knowing. Let yourself rest in that knowing. Let yourself be held by the frequency of grace. You do not need to fix the moment. You only need to feel it. You do not need to escape your life. You only need to live it from the inside out. And when you do, when you finally drop the mask, the defenses, the striving, something miraculous occurs. You begin to shine, not with effort, but with ease, not by force, but by flow. Not because you've achieved enlightenment, but because you've remembered that you are and always have been the light. You are not tuning into something outside of you. You are returning to what you've always been. The frequency of grace is not a sound, it is a state. A state of being so deeply aligned with the truth that there is no longer anything to defend, anything to prove, anything to chase. You are simply here. And here is holy. Now is holy. You are holy. Let this truth be your foundation. Let it be the silence beneath every word, the peace beneath every storm, the knowing beneath every doubt. You are grace in motion, love in form, light in a temporary dance with shadow. And you do not need to become this. You need only to remember, and remember, and remember again, until every breath is a prayer. Every step is a blessing. Every moment, a miracle. There comes a moment, not marked by time or circumstance, but by an inner softening when the soul begins to hear what the ears could never catch. A whisper not from outside, but from the eternal depth within a whisper that says, you no longer have to strive to be what you already are. This is the sacred tuning, not a practice of acquisition, but a falling away, a remembering, like the moon revealing itself, not by growing, but by the clouds dissolving. You are not becoming more, you are becoming clear. And in this clarity, you begin to notice that grace was never silent. It was only that your mind was louder. It is not that life lacked answers, it is that your questions stood in the way of hearing them. When the noise subsides, the signal is always there. It pulses with the rhythm of stars. It breathes with the same silence that rests between waves. It speaks without sound, but its message is undeniable. You are not apart from anything. You begin to see that separation was always the illusion, that between you and another is not a wall, but a mirror, that between you and the divine is not a distance, but a veil made of thought. And each time you return to presence, that veil grows thinner, until one day it falls completely, and all that remains is the simple, infinite radiance of being. To walk in grace is not to walk above the world, but to walk so deeply within it that even the mundane becomes sacred. Washing the dishes becomes a holy offering. Speaking with a stranger becomes communion. Even your tears, especially your tears, become anointing waters of renewal, because in grace, nothing is excluded. Nothing is wasted. Everything belongs. You begin to feel the difference between effort and essence. Effort is a reaching. Essence is a radiance. Effort says, I must become. Essence says, I already am. And when you choose essence, you do not lose your drive, you simply change its source. No longer pulled by fear, you are drawn by truth. Your doing flows from being. Your giving arises from fullness. Your living becomes a song that doesn't need an audience to be beautiful. You stop performing and you begin to resonate. And resonance is the true magnetism. It attracts not what flatters the ego, but what fulfills the soul. You no longer try to control the timing of life, because you begin to sense that all things unfold according to an unseen rhythm, not dictated by your preferences, but orchestrated by something infinitely wise. You stop forcing open doors and instead sit in peace, trusting that what is meant will arrive on the breath of divine timing. And as this trust deepens, you begin to live more slowly, not out of laziness, but out of reverence. You realize there is no need to rush through sacred ground, and every moment is sacred ground. Even the moments that feel empty, confusing, or still, especially those, for grace often speaks loudest in the places we try hardest to avoid. To walk with grace is to stop asking life to meet your demands and start asking how you may align with its wisdom. It is the shift from command to communion, from anxiety to allowance, from grasping to gratitude. It is the realization that what you seek is not somewhere else, waiting for you to arrive. It is here, waiting for you to become still enough to notice. There is no path to grace, because grace is not a destination. It is the path itself. It is the breath you're breathing now, the awareness behind your eyes, the warmth behind your chest. And the more you attune to it, the more your life becomes art, not the kind hung in galleries, but the kind that stirs hearts, opens minds, and softens the hardened places in the world. You become a living reminder that it is safe to let go, safe to slow down, safe to be real. For grace is not a perfection you must maintain, it is a space you allow. It is not earned by effort, it is welcomed through surrender. And in your surrender, the world begins to change, not because it conforms to your will, but because your vision clears. You begin to see the divine not as a concept, but as a constant. Not as a doctrine, but as a presence. Not as a promise for the afterlife, but as the very fabric of now. And as your vision clears, you no longer see others through the lens of judgment, but through the eyes of the soul. You realize that every person you meet is not a character to be analyzed, compared, or feared, but a flicker of the same eternal light that dwells within you. Their pain is your pain. Their joy, your reflection. And when they forget who they are, you do not react with superiority, you remember for them. You become a mirror, silently reflecting their forgotten beauty until they see it again. This is grace in action, not a gesture of pity, but of profound recognition. Not charity, but unity. It is the quiet compassion that says, you are not alone in this. I see the sacred in you, even if you don't right now. And from this space, you stop defending your heart, because it no longer needs protection. You are not a fortress built to endure the world. You are an open field, kissed by sunlight, touched by every breeze, moved not by resistance, but by receptivity. And in that openness, you become deeply resilient, not the kind of resilience that hardens, but the kind that bends without breaking, that absorbs and transforms, that heals by simply being. To walk in this way is not to avoid the world's pain, but to transmute it through presence. Grace does not fear darkness, for it knows that darkness is only the absence of light, never the absence of truth. And so you learn not to run from your shadows, but to sit with them, to welcome them as misunderstood parts of yourself returning home. There is no need to exile what feels broken. Grace whispers, bring it here, let even this be held in love. And as you allow your pain to be seen, not dramatized, not suppressed, simply seen, you realize that it begins to soften. It loses its edge, not because it is gone, but because it has been received. Pain transforms not through resistance, but through presence. And grace is the purest form of presence. This is how healing begins, not as a project, but as a permission. Not as a fixing, but as a remembering. You remember what it feels like to be whole, not because you've become something new, but because you've stopped pretending to be anything else. The paradox is revealed. The more you let go, the more you arrive. The more you surrender, the more you expand. The more you stop seeking grace, the more you are immersed in it. You begin to see that grace is not just in moments of stillness, it is in the mess, the chaos, the imperfect unfolding of everyday life. It is there in the misunderstandings, in the disappointments, in the delays. It is not waiting on the other side of clarity, it is the bridge that carries you there. And so life itself becomes your teacher, your temple, your tuning fork. Every moment invites you deeper. Every challenge becomes an altar. Every silence, a sermon. You no longer measure success by outcomes, but by alignment. Not by what you accomplish, but by how faithfully you listen to the whisper of your soul. Because in the end, grace is not something that happens to you. It is something that moves through you. And the more you open, the more it flows. The more you trust, the more it sings. The more you become yourself, the more it reveals that you were never separate from it. And as you allow grace to move through you, something begins to shift, not outside, but within. The hard edges of your identity begin to soften. The rigid beliefs that once framed your world start to dissolve, like sandcastles in the tide of awareness. You no longer cling so tightly to being right, being first, being certain. Instead, you fall in love with the mystery itself. For grace teaches not through instruction, but through intimacy. It does not hand you maps, it places you into the territory. It does not provide guarantees, it offers guidance through feeling, through resonance, through trust. And in this sacred unfolding, you begin to value not the destination, but the depth. Not the clarity, but the connection. Not the perfection of the path, but the purity of presence along the way. There is a moment when you look in the mirror and no longer see a reflection to critique, but a soul to bless. You meet your own gaze not with demands, but with compassion. And in that moment, something ancient awakens, a memory older than time, a knowing not written in any book, but etched into the fabric of your being. You realize you are not here by accident. You were not thrown into this life as a random spark. You were breathed into existence by the same force that spins the stars, the same power that gives birth to galaxies. You are an intentional emanation of grace, disguised in human form for a little while. And your work here is not to win or conquer or even understand, but to remember, to become so present, so aligned, that even your simplest acts carry the fragrance of the sacred, that even your silence speaks volumes, that even your pain becomes poetry. This is the power of tuning in. Not the power to control reality, but to be so in harmony with it that you no longer resist its flow. You move with life, not against it. You dance, even when the music is faint. You trust, even when the next step is hidden in shadow. Because you no longer need to see the whole path, you have become the path. In this place, you begin to bless your own becoming. You begin to honor each moment not as a test, but as a teacher. Each breath a communion, each relationship a revelation. The need to prove dissolves. The urge to compare evaporates. What remains is a deep stillness, rooted in truth, flowing in love. And the more you dwell here, the more your life changes, not because you forced it to, but because grace, when welcomed, has no choice but to transform. It rewrites your patterns. It clears your fears. It opens your eyes to beauty that was always there, waiting to be seen through the lens of presence. So let this be the turning point. Not a revolution of effort, but a return to truth. Not a striving for greatness, but a resting in grace. You are not who the world told you to be. You are not even who you thought you had to become. You are what remains when all becoming falls away. You are the breath that continues when all words have ended. You are the love that flows without condition, the awareness that shines without effort, the grace that lives even in silence. Now you see it, don't you? The frequency you long to hear was never hidden. It was always humming beneath your striving, beneath your pain, beneath even your hope. It was not absent, it was merely waiting for you to stop running, to stop proving, to stop fixing, and to simply receive. And as you stand here, open, present, whole, you begin to remember, not just intellectually, but viscerally, that grace is not a state you achieve. It is the nature of what you are. You are not tuning into something foreign, you are awakening to your original vibration. No more masks, no more roles, no more performing for a world that can never validate what it didn't create. Now, you live from essence, you move from alignment, you speak from soul. Even the challenges remain, but you no longer confuse them with obstacles. You see them now as invitations, each one calling you back to truth. You no longer fear falling because you have discovered what catches you. It is not your plans, it is not your strength, it is grace, ever present, ever patient, ever yours. And now, you are a vessel of this grace. Not because you try to be, but because you allow it. You walk lighter, speak softer, love deeper not as techniques, but as reflections of who you've become by remembering who you've always been. You are no longer the seeker, you are the sanctuary. You are no longer chasing the light, you are the light. And the light does not need to shine. It only needs to be. So let yourself be. Let the final striving dissolve into stillness. Let the last question rest unanswered. Let the quiet hold you now, not because you've figured it out, but because you felt the truth. That you are not separate. You are not unworthy. You are not lost. You are tuned in at last to the universal frequency of grace. And from this moment forward, may every step you take echo with this remembrance. Not as a goal, but as a rhythm. Not as a doctrine, but as a presence. Not as a promise for later, but as a truth for now. Because now is where grace lives. And now is where you are. And now is enough. There is a stillness older than time, resting at the center of your being. It is not moved by appearances, nor swayed by the tides of circumstance. It has watched every joy you've ever felt, every sorrow, every thought, as they rose and fell like waves across an eternal ocean, and yet it remained unmoved, not indifferent, but infinite. That stillness is you. Not the you with a name, not the you with a past, not the you who fears or longs or strives, but the one who sees, the one who watches, the silent witness, the timeless observer. We have been trained to identify with the experience as if we are only the dancer and not also the floor beneath our feet, the music in the air and the one watching from the balcony. We mistake our roles for our reality, our emotions for our essence. But you are not the passing moment. You are that which perceives the moment. You are not the character on the stage. You are the space in which the entire theater arises. When you begin to live as the observer, life ceases to be something that happens to you. It becomes something that arises within you. You are no longer tossed in the current. You become the riverbed itself, grounding the waters as they move. And suddenly, nothing is personal. Nothing is lost. Even pain becomes sacred because you are not inside the storm. You are the sky that holds it. Can you see this? Can you feel the vastness within you? The one who watches your thoughts is not your thoughts. The one who sees your fear is not afraid. The one who feels your sorrow is not broken. It merely observes, lovingly, patiently, endlessly. The Tao Te Ching says, the great Tao flows everywhere. All things are born from it, yet it does not create them. That is the way of the observer. It allows all things. It holds all things. But it clings to nothing. We live in a culture addicted to motion. Do more, say more, prove more, but your power is not in your doing. It is in your being. The observer does not need to fix what it sees. It simply sees with clarity, and that clarity, that presence becomes the healing itself. Think of the sun. It does not chase shadows. It does not fight the night. It simply shines. And in its presence, all that is false disappears. You are that Sunday. You are the light that reveals, not through judgment, but through being. Even the darkest fear dissolves in your awareness when you do not feed it with identity. Your thoughts are not you. They are events, like birds passing through the sky, like weather shifting across a landscape. You are the sky. You are the awareness in which all events rise and fall. And when you root yourself in that awareness, the world changes, not because the world changed, but because your seeing has changed. This is not detachment. This is deeper presence. Detachment is resistance. Observation is love. To observe without agenda, to witness without defense, is the highest form of compassion. When you look at yourself, your story, your patterns, your longings with this gentle gaze, something miraculous occurs. You stop identifying with the wound and begin to see the wisdom it contains. You stop clinging to the outcome and start flowing with the truth. Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. This is the path of the observer. It is not withdrawal from life. It is the most profound engagement with it. When you stop being consumed by your story, you begin to participate from your soul. Your actions become extensions of awareness, not reactions of fear. Imagine standing in a forest watching the wind move through the trees. You do not rush to stop it. You do not judge the leaves that fall or the branches that sway. You simply behold. That is how the soul sees life, not as a problem to solve, but as a dance to witness. You are not here to conquer life. You are here to see it, to know it, to feel it without being lost in it. The ego says, I am what I do, what I have, what others think of me, but the observer says, I am. That is enough. That is everything. You don't have to earn peace. You only have to stop resisting the present. You don't have to chase truth. You only have to become quiet enough to hear it. It is not hidden. It is not far. It is behind every breath, inside every pause, beneath every emotion. The observer is never absent. It is only forgotten. When you awaken as the observer, you no longer say, I am sad. You say, sadness is arising. You no longer say, I am angry. You say, anger is moving through me. And in that subtle shift of language, you reclaim your freedom. You stop being defined by your experiences and you begin to define them by how you hold them, how you bless them, how you allow them to pass. Rumi wrote, try to be a sheet of paper with nothing on it. Be a spot of ground where nothing is growing, where something might be planted. A seed, possibly, from the absolute. The observer is that sacred ground. Empty, open, fertile, ready to receive. Unattached to what comes or goes. You are the canvas, not the paint. You are the silence, not the noise. You are the eternal witness, not the fleeting form. And the more you live from this knowing, the lighter life becomes. You stop trying to hold the world together. You let it unfold, and you watch, and you trust. Trust that there is a rhythm to all things, a harmony that does not need your control, only your awareness. Every heartbeat, every sunrise, every death and birth, they all arise within the same field of consciousness. You are that field. You are not in the universe is in you. You do not have to strive to become whole. You already are. You do not have to fix your soul. It is untouched. What you call healing is not the mending of a broken self. It is the unveiling of the unbroken witness. Even in suffering, the observer remains. Even in confusion, the observer sees clearly. Even in death, the observer is eternal. That is who you are. Not what happens to you, but that which can never be harmed. And so I invite you, gently but urgently, to return. Return to the seat of awareness. Not tomorrow, not when you've read more or done more or healed more. Now, in this breath, in this silence, close your eyes and feel the one who sees. Without effort, without thought, just presence. That is home, that is truth, that is you. You are the observer of the universe, not just a participant. You are the mirror in which stars behold themselves. You are the stillness in which time forgets its name. And in this knowing, may you walk the world not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. Not with answers, but with presence. Not with noise, but with depth. Not with fear, but with light. You are not here to react. You are here to see. And in that seeing, everything transforms. There is a sacred intelligence that guides the tides, unfurls the petals of a rose without resistance, and carves canyons with the mere flow of water. That same intelligence animates you. It breathes you without your command. It dreams through you even as you sleep. And yet, we so often forget we become hypnotized by the noise, entranced by the forms, pulled into the drama of the stage, forgetting that we are not merely players, but the vastness in which the entire play is witnessed. When you live as the observer, you become rooted in the eternal while still walking in the temporary. You do not deny your humanity, you sanctify it. You do not escape the moment you illuminate it from within. You begin to see that the experiences you once called problems were not obstacles, but invitations, each a whisper from the universe asking, will you awaken now? And if you listen closely, there is no pain that does not come bearing a gift. There is no loss that does not reveal a deeper presence. Even your tears, especially your tears, water the soil of your becoming. They remind you that your soul is still alive beneath the armor. The observer allows them to fall, not as weakness, but as sacred rain, returning you to your source. Imagine now that your life is not a task to be completed, but a masterpiece already in progress. You do not need to rush to the end. The artist does not panic to finish the painting. The joy is in the creating. The sculptor does not mourn the block of marble, he rejoices, knowing what lives within it. You are both the artist and the art. The observer is the part of you that knows the chisel is not destruction, it is revelation. The old identities, the false layers, the masks, they fall away not because you hate them, but because you outgrow them. You begin to see that clinging to them is like clutching smoke. They were never who you were, only who you thought you needed to be. The moment you stop defending them, your soul can finally breathe again. And in that breath, the light of who you truly are begins to shine. It is not a loud light. It does not demand to be seen. It does not compete or compare. It is soft, like the glow of dawn. It is the kind of light that transforms simply by being. It blesses without intention. It heals without effort, because it comes from a place beyond the ego, a place where you are not trying to be anything, but simply allowing all that you are to be seen without resistance, without shame. This is the way of the observer, quiet, humble, free. And as you dwell more deeply in this space, you begin to notice something strange and beautiful. The world does not seem as threatening. The judgments that once stung lose their power. The need to defend, to prove, to posture it dissolves. Not because you don't care, but because you now see from a different altitude. You've risen above the storm. Not in arrogance, but in clarity. You begin to feel compassion not just for others, but for yourself. You see the times you forgot your light, and you forgive. You see the moments you lashed out, the fears you obeyed, the love you withheld, not with shame, but with understanding. The observer does not punish. It recognizes, it accepts, and in that acceptance, it liberates. This is the gentle revolution of awakening. Nothing outside you needs to change for peace to arise. It is not in changing the world, but in changing how you see the world that transformation takes root. And seeing as the observer is the highest form of vision, it is clear, unclouded, anchored in truth. The great mystics have spoken of this place. They've called it the kingdom within, the uncarved block, the still point in a turning world. And you have touched it too, perhaps in a moment of silence, in the pause between heartbeats, in the breath that caught your soul in wonder. It is not new, it is eternal. And it is calling you now, not with urgency, but with unwavering love. You do not need to understand it with the mind, you only need to experience it. Let yourself become empty enough to feel it. Let go of the arguments, the conclusions, the need to be right, the need to be understood. The observer has no need for such things, for it knows what cannot be spoken. So become the silence, become the presence, become the one who watches, not to judge, not to control, but simply to love more deeply. And as you live from this place, life will no longer be a struggle against the current. It will become a communion with it. You will not swim upstream, you will float, trust, surrender. And in that surrender, you will discover the deepest paradox of all. The less you try to control, the more you are carried exactly where you need to be. Because life is not against you. It is not testing you. It is reflecting you. And when the reflection is clear, when your seeing is pure, when your heart is open, the entire world becomes your teacher. Every leaf becomes a scripture. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every moment becomes an opportunity to remember you are not the experience. You are the one who sees it. You are the observer of the universe. And that, beloved soul, is your true power. In the sacred stillness of your awareness, you begin to feel something ancient awakening, not a memory, but a knowing. It does not come from the mind, it rises from beneath it. It is the recognition that you were never truly bound by the stories you've lived, the identities you've worn, or the pain you've carried. You were the presence that allowed them all to unfold. You were the space through which the river of life moved, not the debris it carried. And once this knowing takes root, even the most ingrained fear begins to lose its grip. Because how can fear control the one who sees it as passing weather? How can shame define the one who watches without flinching? You stop being entangled in the stories of the world and you begin to walk above them, not detached, but elevated, not better, but clearer. There is a quiet nobility in those who live from this place. They speak softly, but their presence echoes. They do not need to win arguments because they are not lost in the noise of opposition. They do not need to defend their truth because their truth is not an idea, it is a state of being. They do not preach, they radiate. They do not convert, they invite. They are not pulled by appearances, they rest in essence. And so you begin to listen differently, not just with your ears, but with your soul. You listen to the silence beneath the words. You listen to the emotion beneath the posture. You listen not to respond, but to understand. And in that listening, you become a sanctuary, not just for others, but for yourself. You become the safe place you've always longed for. Not because life stopped hurting, but because you stopped abandoning yourself when it did. This is the ultimate return, not to an idea, but to your own sacred center. The space within you that does not flinch when the world shakes. The space that watches the storm, not from fear, but from reverence. That watches joy, not from clinging, but from awe. That watches change, not as loss, but as the dance of form within the field of the formless. You see, when you live as the observer, you do not deny emotion, you give it space to be. You do not suppress the waves, you recognize that they cannot touch the ocean floor. You are that floor, unshakable, steady, silent. And because of that, you can hold the waves with compassion instead of resistance. You can feel without drowning. You can experience without becoming. This is the great spiritual art, not to escape life, but to embrace it without identification. To move through the world as a clear mirror, reflecting truth without distortion. To love with fullness, but without possession. To serve with humility, but without the hunger for approval. To walk with purpose, but without the weight of needing to prove your worth. You already are. You always have been. Your worth is not an equation. It is a constant. It is the light that cannot be increased by praise or diminished by criticism. And once you know this, not as a concept, but as a lived reality, you become immovable in the most graceful way. You no longer reach for fleeting highs, because the highest joy is presence. You no longer avoid the lows, because even pain becomes a portal to deeper awareness. You no longer seek outside, because everything you were searching for was hidden in plain sight in the silent witness that's been with you through every breath, every tear, every heartbeat. The observer is not outside of you. It is not a skill to master. It is your original nature, the one you had before you were named, before you were shamed. Before you were shaped into what the world needed you to be, it is the you that watched it all unfold without ever being diminished by it. And now it is time to return. Return not with regret, but with reverence. Return not as a seeker, but as the light returning to itself. Return not to escape the world, but to finally see it clearly from the place within you that is untouched by its noise. Because the most powerful being in the universe is not the one who controls all things. It is the one who sees all things and remains at peace. You are not here to control life. You are here to remember that you are life. And when you do, the need to strive dissolves. The need to be seen vanishes. The need to hold on loosens, and all that remains is what was always there. Presence, clarity, peace, and a quiet joy that no circumstance can touch. Then we walk further now, deeper into the garden of your soul, where no footsteps have echoed in years, where the wind carries ancient songs your mind has forgotten, but your being still remembers. You begin to recognize that most of your life has not been lived, it has been reacted to. And yet, beneath every reaction, behind every grasping thought, there was always a silent choice waiting to be made. The choice not to cling, but to notice. Not to resist, but to breathe. Not to fear the fire, but to sit beside it and feel its warmth without leaping into its flames. As the observer, you do not suppress the fire, you learn its language. You no longer shout over your pain, you bow your head and listen to its wisdom. For there is a holiness in discomfort that the ego will never understand. Only the soul knows that wounds are not punishments, they are portals. They tear through illusion, not to harm, but to reveal what was too sacred to be seen before. And it is here, in this quiet recognition, that the layers begin to shed, not by force, but by grace. You do not need to strip them away. You need only to stand still and let the false identities melt in the warmth of your presence. The one who is watching has no need for masks. The one who is aware has no interest in defending what is not true. In this way, even solitude becomes sacred, no longer a space of lack, but of communion. You begin to see that loneliness was never the absence of others, it was the absence of your own attention. But now, with your awareness anchored, the room fills with light. You become your own company, and it is enough, more than enough. It is beautiful. From this stillness, love flows not as an emotion, but as an essence. It does not depend on closeness or agreement. It radiates. It expands through you and touches even those you will never meet. For the observer is not confined by distance. It sees the interconnected thread of all things. It knows that the joy you awaken in your heart today will ripple outward, reaching someone across oceans, across time, across lives. You are not bound by your body. You are not limited to your name. These are temporary vessels for the eternal awareness that you are. And once you begin to feel this, not believe it, but feel it, a kind of quiet awe arises. The kind of awe that makes the sky seem closer and your breath feel like a prayer. Time begins to lose its grip. You stop measuring life by clocks and calendars. Instead, you measure by presence, by how deeply you inhabit the moment, by how open your heart is when you hold the gaze of a stranger, by how silently you can sit and still feel whole. This is not escapism. This is deeper embodiment. You are no longer acting from the surface. You are living from the depths. And in the depths, all labels fall away. There is no man or woman, no success or failure, no right or wrong. There is only the unfolding. And you, the observer, are not here to judge the unfolding. You are here to bear witness to its beauty. The river does not argue with the rock. It flows around it. The sky does not mourn the falling of leaves. It holds them in their descent. In the same way, the awakened observer does not resist what comes, it allows. It does not cling to what goes, it blesses. And in this allowing, in this soft surrender, life opens itself in ways the mind could never plan. What you once called miracles become natural. What once felt impossible becomes inevitable, not because the external changed, but because you have ceased to block the flow of what was always meant for you. Your only task now is to stay open, to remain soft, to stay with the breath, the body, the moment, to listen to the silence beneath the surface of things. And as you do, the most tender truth begins to reveal itself, not as a lightning bolt, but as a whisper. It tells you that you are not here to fix the world. You are here to love it more clearly. You are not here to escape the illusion. You are here to see through it, with eyes that do not judge and a heart that does not close. For the observer has no agenda, only awareness, no expectation, only presence. And in this presence, even the hardest truths become bearable. Even the deepest grief becomes sacred. Even death itself becomes not an ending, but a transformation, a movement from form back into essence. This is the rhythm of all life. Appear, dissolve, return, arise, release, begin again. And through it all, you remain not as the character, but as the screen. Not as the wind, but as the space it moves through, untouched, unchanged, eternal. There comes a point in this sacred remembering where you no longer ask, why is this happening to me? The question dissolves not because you found the answer, but because you no longer need one. The observer does not seek explanation, it rests in observation. It watches the mountain rise from the plain, the storm gather on the horizon, and it does not panic. It trusts the design even when the mind does not understand the architect's hand. And slowly, the fear of not knowing begins to lift. You no longer scramble to fill the silence. You begin to sense that in the quiet there is a language far older than words, a wisdom that speaks not through instruction, but through vibration. Not through answers, but through alignment. And in this alignment, a deeper intelligence takes over, an intelligence that orchestrates galaxies without effort and heals the broken without rush. You are a part of that intelligence. You do not need to earn your place in it, you are born of it. Your worth is not a matter of debate, it is embedded in the atoms of your being. The same force that ignites the stars pulses through your veins. And once you truly feel this, not as an idea, but as a living reality, you begin to walk the earth differently. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You look at a tree and see not bark and leaves, but a living sermon in stillness. You look into a stranger's eyes and feel not separation, but recognition. The observer in you sees the observer in them. The masks may differ, but the gaze is the same, timeless, boundless, divine. And in this gaze, the urge to judge begins to soften. You see that judgment was never a reflection of others, it was a veil over your own heart. But now, you no longer need to hold others at arm's length to feel safe. The observer needs no defenses. It sees clearly and loves anyway. This love, born of awareness, is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is not conditional on mood or merit. It is the default state of a being who no longer sees separation. It is the love of the sun for the flower, expecting nothing in return. It is the love of the wind through the reeds, playing a song and asking no applause. And when you live from this place, your very presence becomes healing. not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer resist. You stop projecting your shadows onto others and begin to reclaim them as lost children, ready to return home. You stop seeing conflict as something to win and begin to view it as a mirror asking you to remember what you've forgotten. The observer does not get lost in drama. It sees the wound beneath the rage, the fear behind the mask, the cry for connection beneath the attack. It holds space instead of taking space. It listens beyond the noise. And in that listening, healing happens not because it was forced, but because it was allowed. This is the alchemy of attention. When you stop reacting and start witnessing, everything begins to transform, not by effort, but by presence. The things you used to chase begin to arrive. The things you used to resist begin to dissolve. The world no longer feels like a battlefield, it becomes a temple. And in this temple, every experience becomes sacred. Every failure becomes a teacher. Every ending becomes a gate. There is nothing to escape, nothing to regret, nothing to fix. There is only the unfolding and the awareness that beholds it. The more you dwell in this state, the less you need from the world. Not because you have become indifferent, but because you have become whole. Wholeness does not beg, it blesses. It does not compete, it creates. It does not grasp, it gives. And so your life becomes a giving, not of effort, but of essence. Not a performance, but a presence. You no longer try to change the world with force, you change it with the stillness that moves through you like breath through a flute. This stillness, it is not an absence, it is a fullness that holds everything without clinging to anything. It is not passive, it is the most powerful state a human can enter. For in stillness, you are no longer the wave, you are the ocean remembering itself. And the ocean does not panic when the waves rise. It does not mourn when they fall. It's simply island deep, expansive, whole. So be the ocean. Be the one who sees. Be the presence in which all things rise and fall and remain unchanged. You are no longer standing outside yourself, peering in with judgment or longing. You have entered the temple of your own awareness, and it has welcomed you home without question. The path that once seemed far and winding was not a path at all. It was a spiral inward, circling not toward a destination, but toward a depth. And now that you've arrived, not somewhere new, but somewhere ancient within you, you remember there was never anything missing. Even the questions that drove you here, the ache to be understood, the hunger to belong, the need to find meaning, they dissolve like mist in morning light. Not because they were wrong, but because they have been fulfilled, not by answers, but by presence. And now you are that presence. The one who no longer rushes to speak because they have nothing to prove. The one who no longer hides in the noise because they are not afraid of their own silence. The one who no longer clings to form because they have fallen in love with the formless. And in this stillness, the world reveals itself anew. You see through the veil of appearances and begin to touch the fabric beneath all things. The joy of a child's laugh, the weight of another's sorrow, the light in the eyes of a stranger, they all carry the same essence now. Nothing is separate. Nothing is other. You have become the field in which all duality dissolves. And so you walk not away from the world, but through it, as one who no longer needs to grasp or resist. You walk like water moves, gentle, unstoppable, true. You bring peace not by speaking of it, but by being it. You become the eye of the storm, not untouched by life, but unshaken by it. You become trustworthy in the way rivers are, you carry things without holding them. You become generous in the way trees are, you give shade without asking who is worthy. You become luminous in the way stars are, not because you strive to shine, but because you've stopped dimming your light. This is the gift of the observer. You are no longer fused with the story, and so you are free to love the story, to live it fully, but not be consumed by it. And when you are no longer consumed by your own story, something sacred happens. You become a safe place for others to awaken. Not through teaching, but through presence. You look at them and do not see their masks or mistakes. You see their essence. You see what they have forgotten. And your gaze becomes a mirror, silently saying, you are already enough. You are already home. This is how the world is healed, not all at once, not through revolution, but through remembrance. One soul at a time, returning to the observer, returning to truth, returning to love. So now, let this be your vow, not to strive, not to improve, not to become someone else, but to remain. Remain with your breath, remain with your truth, remain in the stillness that sees, that accepts, that loves without condition. Remain as the one who watches not with detachment, but with divine compassion. And in your remaining life will unfold, not because you forced it, but because you no longer stood in its way. You are the observer of the universe, not merely a participant. You are the sky that holds every storm and every sunrise, the silent witness to all beginnings and all ends, the presence that cannot be burned, broken, or lost. And now you remember, now you rest, now you are free.